People often confuse intelligence with the ability to dominate a conversation. They believe that the person with the sharpest reply, the strongest argument, or the best evidence is automatically the more powerful one. But life does not really work that way. Some of the most emotionally drained people are those constantly trying to prove themselves to minds that were never willing to understand them in the first place. Every meaningless argument quietly takes something away from you: your peace, your focus, your clarity. And the moment someone gains control over your emotions, your attention, or your inner calm, the conversation stops being about truth. It becomes about ego, pride, and emotional control. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself not to become like the chaos around him, not because the world would suddenly become more reasonable, but because protecting your inner peace is one of the greatest forms of discipline a person can develop. Many people spend years replaying conversations in their heads long after they end. They repeat the words while driving, working, or lying awake at night. They waste energy trying to explain themselves to people who are committed to misunderstanding them. Meanwhile, the other person has already moved on emotionally. That is the hidden cost of foolish conflict. It follows you long after the moment has passed. Stoicism teaches a different path, a quieter path, one built on restraint, clarity, and emotional control. Not every opinion deserves your attention. Not every insult deserves a response. And not every battle deserves access to your peace. Real strength is not about becoming cold or emotionless. It is about staying steady while surrounded by people who constantly lose control of themselves. Because true intelligence is not measured by how loudly someone defends themselves. It is measured by how little foolishness can disturb their peace. There is always a subtle moment when a conversation stops being about understanding and starts becoming an emotional competition. At first, everything feels calm. The discussion seems reasonable enough to continue. You explain yourself carefully, choosing your words with patience because part of you still believes clarity can fix the tension. The other person nods, maybe even pretends to listen, and for a brief moment it feels like the conversation might actually lead somewhere meaningful. Then something changes. Their tone becomes sharper. Your words start coming back distorted. Simple explanations are treated like personal attacks. Facts stop mattering because the conversation is no longer about facts at all. It becomes about pride. And pride has a strange way of turning even intelligent people into prisoners of their own emotions. Most people fail to notice this shift because they become too focused on defending themselves. They believe that if they explain things one more time, the misunderstanding will disappear. Maybe stronger logic will help. Maybe the other person will finally become reasonable. But the harder they push for resolution, the further the conversation drifts away from it. Emotionally reactive people rarely calm down because someone presents better evidence. In many cases, evidence feels threatening because accepting it would require humility, and humility is difficult for a mind deeply attached to being right. That is why pointless arguments become exhausting so quickly. One person is trying to create clarity, while the other is trying to protect their identity. Those are completely different goals, and conversations built on opposing goals almost always collapse into frustration. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology tried to explain it. Epictetus taught that suffering begins when people try to control what was never theirs to control. Another person's reactions do not belong to you. Their ego does not belong to you. Their inability to listen is not your responsibility to fix. Yet many people spend years carrying the emotional weight of conversations they never had the power to repair in the first place. They replay arguments in their minds while driving, working, or trying to sleep. They imagine better responses, better timing, different words. Meanwhile, the person who created the chaos has already moved on emotionally, leaving them alone with unresolved frustration. The argument may end externally, but internally it continues for hours. The mind keeps searching for closure where closure does not exist. Part of wisdom is recognizing when a conversation has become emotionally poisoned. This does not mean becoming cold or detached from people. It simply means understanding the limits of reason. Some people do not enter discussions seeking truth. They enter seeking victory, attention, or emotional release. Their anger becomes the center of the interaction, and everything else begins orbiting around it. And the moment you become emotionally reactive, their chaos starts controlling your behavior. Your breathing changes. Your thoughts begin racing. Your focus narrows. Suddenly, your peace depends on convincing someone who already decided they do not want to understand you. That is the trap, and many intelligent people fall into it because they confuse emotional endurance with emotional mastery. Staying in a pointless argument is not always strength. Sometimes it is simply attachment disguised as determination. This is why silence can become a form of discipline rather than avoidance. Silence is often misunderstood. People associate it with weakness, surrender, or an inability to respond. But in reality, silence can reflect tremendous self-control. It takes far more awareness to remain calm than it does to react impulsively. Anyone can raise their voice. Anyone can defend their pride. But choosing composure over reaction is much harder. The idea sounds simple on the surface, yet it becomes incredibly difficult in practice because human beings are naturally emotional. The desire to defend ourselves, correct others, and prove our point runs deep within us. Silence interrupts that instinct. It creates space between emotion and reaction, and within that space, clarity begins to return. For most people, silence feels uncomfortable because so much of their identity is tied to how they are perceived. The moment someone questions their intelligence, criticizes their character, or dismisses their opinion, something emotional rises almost immediately beneath the surface. Pride tightens. Thoughts speed up. The mind begins preparing responses before the other person has even finished speaking. Modern culture often mistakes this reaction for confidence. Quick comebacks and emotional intensity are celebrated as strength. But underneath those reactions is usually fear. Fear of looking weak, fear of losing status, fear of being misunderstood by people whose opinions may not even deserve that level of emotional importance. That is why so many conversations become emotionally exhausting. People are not just defending ideas, they're defending identity. The Stoics recognized this clearly. They understood that emotional reactions often reveal dependency rather than power. A person who cannot remain calm when challenged becomes controlled by the behavior of others without realizing it. Emotion clouds perception. It pushes people toward words and actions they later regret. That is why the Stoics valued pause and restraint so deeply. Even a few seconds of silence can interrupt the emotional momentum of a situation. A pause creates distance between instinct and action, and within that distance, clarity has the chance to return. Most emotionally reactive people rely on the absence of that pause. They provoke, interrupt, exaggerate, and pressure others because emotional reactions give them influence. The moment someone becomes visibly frustrated, they feel they have gained control over the atmosphere. This is why calmness changes interactions so dramatically. When someone expects resistance but receives composure instead, confusion appears almost immediately. Emotionally reactive people often enter conversations already prepared for conflict. They expect defensiveness, tension, and escalation because those patterns are familiar to them. But calm restraint breaks the pattern they expected. Suddenly, their emotional energy has nowhere to land. Their contradictions become easier to see. Their impatience reveals itself naturally. Insecurity begins leaking through their words without them realizing it. People reveal themselves most clearly when they stop receiving the emotional reactions they were trying to control. That is why silence carries psychological power. It allows reality to unfold without interference. Most people underestimate how much can be understood beneath emotional behavior. Someone who constantly interrupts may not be protecting truth at all. They may simply fear losing emotional control. Someone who becomes aggressive over small disagreements may not actually feel confident internally, no matter how confident they appear on the surface. Emotional instability always reveals itself eventually. But reactive people become too distracted trying to defend themselves to notice these signals clearly. Their entire focus narrows around winning the argument, while the calmer person continues observing. The Stoics valued observation because observation creates understanding without emotional attachment. Once emotions stop controlling perception, people become easier to understand honestly. This is also why emotionally disciplined individuals often seem powerful without trying to dominate anyone. Calmness changes the atmosphere around them. While others move emotionally from one reaction to another, they remain grounded. Their words feel slower, more intentional, more controlled. They do not feed unnecessary tension because they are no longer addicted to emotional stimulation. In a world where many people confuse intensity with confidence, restraint becomes incredibly powerful. The person who stays composed during difficult moments often becomes the emotional center of the room without ever demanding attention. Their stability quietly influences others because calmness exposes how unstable unnecessary reactions really are. Over time, this discipline changes the way conflict feels internally. Situations that once felt deeply personal begin to seem smaller and less threatening. Criticism loses much of its emotional power because self-worth is no longer completely dependent on external approval. Provocation becomes easier to observe without instantly reacting to it. The behavior of foolish people stops feeling like a personal attack and starts looking more like a reflection of their own inner condition. And once that shift fully happens, something important changes inside the mind. Peace no longer feels fragile. It becomes intentional, quiet, controlled, carefully protected from people who never learned how to protect their own peace. If calmness, clarity, and self-mastery are qualities worth building, then continue walking this path, because a peaceful mind is not something people stumble upon by accident. It is trained intentionally through awareness, discipline, and repeated choices. Something interesting happens when you stop feeding emotional conflict with constant resistance. People begin revealing themselves more clearly. Without opposition to energize them, their exaggerations become obvious. Their contradictions slowly rise to the surface. The performance eventually collapses under its own weight because emotional chaos depends on participation. Sometimes, one calm person can completely change the direction of an interaction simply by refusing to mirror the instability in front of them. That does not mean every situation will suddenly become peaceful. Some people remain committed to misunderstanding others no matter how calmly they are treated. Still, protecting your inner stability matters far more than winning temporary approval from someone trapped inside their own emotions. The Stoics believe character is built through repeated moments of restraint, especially when restraint feels difficult. Every unnecessary argument presents a quiet choice. You can continue sacrificing your peace trying to force understanding, or you can recognize that not every mind is ready for reason at the same moment. Once that realization settles deeply, silence stops feeling empty. It starts feeling intentional. Over time, this changes the way you move through the world. You stop treating every disagreement like a personal attack, and you begin protecting your attention more carefully. Calmness becomes less about appearing unaffected and more about refusing to hand emotional control to people who have never learned to manage themselves with wisdom or restraint. Silence feels difficult for most people because human beings are deeply attached to how they are perceived. The moment someone questions their intelligence, criticizes their character, or dismisses their opinion, something emotional rises almost instantly beneath the surface. Pride tightens. Thoughts begin racing. The mind searches for responses before the other person has even finished speaking. Many people interpret this reaction as strength because modern culture often celebrates quick comebacks and aggressive confidence. But beneath that reaction is usually fear of looking weak, fear of losing status, fear of being misunderstood by people whose opinions may not even deserve that level of emotional importance. This is why so many conversations become emotionally exhausting. People are not just defending ideas, they're defending their identity. The Stoics understood this clearly. They recognize that emotional reactions often reveal dependency rather than true power. A person who cannot remain calm when challenged becomes controlled by the behavior of others without even realizing it. Seneca warned repeatedly about the danger of anger because anger creates temporary blindness. It narrows perception and pushes people toward actions they later regret. That is why he believed delay was one of the strongest forms of discipline. Even a few seconds of silence can interrupt the emotional momentum of a situation. A pause creates distance between instinct and action, and within that distance, clarity has room to return. Most foolish individuals rely entirely on the absence of that pause. They provoke, interrupt, exaggerate, and pressure others because emotional reactions give them influence. The moment someone becomes visibly frustrated, they feel validated, as if they now control the emotional atmosphere. This is why calmness changes interactions so dramatically. When someone expects resistance but receives composure instead, confusion appears almost immediately. Emotionally reactive people often prepare themselves for conflict long before a conversation even begins. They expect defensiveness, arguments, and escalation because those patterns feel familiar to them. But calm restraint interrupts the pattern they expected. Suddenly, their emotional energy has nowhere to go. The conversation begins revealing things they never intended to expose. Their impatience becomes obvious. Their contradictions begin slipping into the open. Insecurity starts appearing quietly between sentences. People reveal themselves most clearly when they stop receiving the emotional reaction they hope to control. That is why silence can become psychologically powerful. It allows reality to unfold without interference. Most people underestimate how much information exists beneath someone's tone, timing, and emotional intensity. Words matter, but emotional behavior often reveals far more than language itself. Someone who constantly interrupts may not be protecting truth at all. They may simply fear losing emotional dominance. Someone who becomes aggressive over small disagreements may not truly feel confident internally, no matter how confident they appear on the outside. Emotional instability always reveals itself eventually. The problem is that reactive people become too distracted defending themselves to notice these signals clearly. Their focus narrows completely around proving a point, while the calmer person continues observing. The Stoics valued observation because observation creates understanding without emotional attachment. That does not mean accepting disrespect passively or allowing harmful behavior endlessly. Wisdom still requires boundaries. Some situations demand direct action and honest communication, but there is a difference between intentional response and emotional surrender. One is guided by clarity. The other is guided by wounded pride pretending to be strength. Foolish people rarely recognize this difference because they confuse emotional intensity with authority. They assume louder reactions create greater influence. In reality, emotional control often carries far more presence than emotional force. A calm person can change the atmosphere of a room without ever raising their voice because composure naturally creates psychological weight. People instinctively trust steadiness more than chaos, even when they cannot fully explain why. Over time, this discipline transforms the way conflict feels internally. Conversations that once felt threatening begin losing their emotional grip. The urge to correct everyone weakens. The need to constantly prove intelligence begins fading. More energy becomes available for things that genuinely matter because less attention is wasted feeding unnecessary tension. Silence no longer feels like suppression. It begins to feel like freedom, and that freedom is difficult to describe until it is experienced personally. The mind becomes quieter. Reactions slow down. Other people's chaos stops entering your thoughts so easily. Once discipline becomes habitual, something unexpected happens. You stop fearing foolish people because their behavior no longer controls your inner state. The strange thing about pointless arguments is that they often continue long after the conversation itself has ended. The words stop. People walk away. Life appears to move forward normally from the outside, yet internally, something still feels unsettled. The mind keeps returning to the interaction, searching for closure that never truly arrives. You replay certain sentences while driving through traffic. You think about better responses while trying to focus at work. Sometimes the argument follows you into quiet moments late at night when everything else becomes still. Meanwhile, the other person may already be focused on something entirely different. But part of your attention remains trapped inside a conversation that produced nothing except emotional exhaustion. That is why foolish conflict is so costly. It rarely damages your life in one dramatic moment. Instead, it drains you slowly through repetition, distraction, and mental fatigue. Most people underestimate how much energy attention actually consumes. The mind cannot carry endless emotional tension without consequences. Every unnecessary conflict occupies mental space that could have been used for reflection, creativity, discipline, or peace. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that life is short and attention is limited. In his view, wasting mental clarity on the endless irrational behavior of others was a quiet form of self-destruction. That idea becomes uncomfortable when examined honestly because many people spend huge portions of their lives emotionally reacting to individuals who contribute nothing meaningful to their growth. One careless conversation can ruin an entire afternoon. A single insult can poison someone's mood for hours. The emotional impact continues because the mind keeps reopening the wound, searching for a way to regain control over something that has already passed. This is where emotional distance becomes necessary. Not coldness, not arrogance. Distance in the sense of maintaining a healthy separation between your inner state and the emotional storms happening around you. A calm person can witness frustration without absorbing it completely. They can listen without becoming consumed by the emotions in front of them. They can observe irrational behavior without feeling personally responsible for fixing every broken interaction. That ability changes everything because it interrupts emotional contagion before it takes control. Most people unconsciously mirror the emotional energy around them. Anger creates anger. Anxiety creates anxiety. Defensiveness creates more defensiveness. But a disciplined mind learns to pause before automatically participating in the emotional pattern unfolding in front of it. That pause creates freedom. It gives a person the ability to decide whether a situation deserves further attention or deserves to end quietly without resistance. Over time, a subtle kind of strength begins developing through this discipline. Situations that once felt overwhelming start losing their intensity. The opinions of difficult people stop carrying the same emotional weight. Criticism no longer lingers in the mind for days because the attachment to proving yourself slowly weakens. This does not happen instantly. The ego fights for attention for a long time. It wants validation. It wants fairness. It wants the final word. Yet wisdom often begins the moment those impulses stop controlling behavior automatically. Epictetus taught that people suffer more from their judgments than from reality itself, and nowhere is this more visible than in unnecessary conflict. The mind keeps amplifying situations long after the original moment has passed. It creates stories, assumptions, and endless replay loops that deepen exhaustion instead of resolving it. But emotional steadiness changes the way time itself feels. Conversations stop echoing endlessly inside your mind because you no longer treat every disagreement like a threat to your identity. You begin recovering emotional energy that was once wasted on resentment, over-explaining, and silent frustration. Internally, life becomes quieter, more focused, more intentional. This is why emotionally disciplined people often appear calmer than everyone around them. It is not because they are untouched by difficulty. It is because they have learned that preserving peace requires refusing emotional invitations. Foolish people continue searching for reactions, but a mind trained in restraint no longer feels obligated to participate in every storm placed in front of it. This becomes especially important in social situations because emotions spread quickly between people. One tense conversation can change the atmosphere of an entire room within seconds. One emotionally unstable person can influence the mood of everyone nearby without even realizing it. Human beings constantly absorb emotional energy through tone, facial expressions, interruptions, impatience, and body language. The Stoics understood this deeply, which is why they treated the inner world as something that required protection. Not isolation from life, but awareness within it. They knew that a person who cannot regulate themselves becomes vulnerable to the emotional state of whoever happens to stand in front of them. And once someone else controls your emotional direction, they begin influencing your decisions, your focus, and eventually your peace. Marcus Aurelius wrote many private reminders to himself about this exact problem. He knew the world would always contain impatient, arrogant, dishonest, and emotionally reactive people. His goal was not to control their behavior. His goal was to make sure their behavior did not control him. That distinction changes everything once it is truly understood. Many people spend their lives trying to manage external chaos while completely neglecting the chaos within themselves. They become obsessed with changing others because they never learned how to remain steady on their own. Stoicism reverses that focus completely. It teaches that inner stability matters more than external victory. A person who loses emotional control during every conflict may appear powerful in the moment, but internally they are being controlled by circumstances they never learned to navigate wisely. This does not mean becoming passive or emotionally disconnected from life. Discipline is not avoidance. A calm person can still speak firmly when necessary. They can still set boundaries. They can still walk away from disrespect without becoming emotionally consumed by it. The difference is that their actions come from clarity instead of emotional overwhelm. Most impulsive reactions feel powerful in the moment, but create regret later because they were driven by temporary emotion rather than thoughtful judgment. Stoicism encourages awareness before expression. It teaches people to examine their emotional state carefully before allowing it to shape their behavior. That habit alone can transform relationships, decisions, and the overall quality of a person's inner life. Over time, this kind of restraint creates a presence others notice immediately, even if they cannot fully explain why. Calm people affect environments differently. While others rush emotionally from one reaction to another, they remain grounded. Their words feel slower, more intentional, and more controlled. They do not feed unnecessary tension because they are no longer addicted to emotional stimulation. In a world where many people mistake intensity for confidence, restraint becomes incredibly powerful. The person who remains composed during difficult moments often becomes the emotional center of the room without ever demanding attention. Their stability quietly influences others because calmness has a way of exposing how unstable unnecessary reactions truly are. And once this discipline becomes natural, foolish behavior stops feeling personally threatening. It simply becomes another reminder of how rare emotional control actually is. There is also another side to foolish behavior that many people fail to notice because they become too emotionally involved to observe it clearly. Not every conflict begins because someone truly cares about truth, understanding, or principles. Sometimes conflict exists simply because attention itself feels emotionally rewarding. For some people, tension becomes a source of significance. The moment they provoke frustration, anger, or defensiveness in someone else, they feel powerful. Your reaction becomes proof that they matter. That is why some individuals continue escalating conversations long after the original issue has lost all meaning. The argument itself is no longer important. What they truly seek is emotional influence. They want to feel capable of disturbing another person's peace because that disturbance gives them a temporary sense of control they struggle to create within themselves. People who constantly seek emotional dominance are rarely as secure as they appear. Truly grounded individuals do not need to win every disagreement because their identity is not dependent on external validation. They can listen without feeling threatened. They can disagree without becoming emotionally unstable. They do not need to humiliate others to protect their sense of self. But insecure minds operate differently. Every disagreement feels dangerous because it threatens the fragile image they are desperately trying to protect. That is why some people react so intensely to small corrections or different opinions. Their ego interprets disagreement as humiliation. Instead of honestly examining themselves, they try regaining emotional control through louder reactions, sharper insults, or manipulative behavior. From the outside, the aggression may look powerful, but internally, it usually comes from fear. The Stoics understood fear more deeply than most people realize. They believed much of human behavior is driven by unconscious attempts to escape discomfort. Some people chase status because they fear insignificance. Others chase control because uncertainty terrifies them. Emotional aggression often comes from the same place. A person who cannot regulate themselves internally begins trying to control the emotions of everyone around them instead. They create tension because tension makes them feel temporarily important. But the strange thing about this pattern is that it eventually becomes its own punishment. People trapped in constant emotional conflict rarely experience genuine peace. Their minds remain restless. Their relationships become unstable. Their emotional state depends entirely on reactions they cannot fully control. They spend their lives fighting battles that never truly satisfy them. Once you recognize this, anger begins changing in subtle ways. The desire to retaliate weakens because you start seeing the suffering hidden beneath foolish behavior. Again, this does not mean tolerating disrespect endlessly or abandoning healthy boundaries. Wisdom still requires discernment. Some people should be distanced from carefully because their instability becomes destructive over time. But hatred becomes harder to maintain once understanding deepens. Compassion slowly begins replacing emotional hostility, because you realize many difficult people are already trapped inside minds that constantly disturb them. Their anger punishes them long before it reaches anyone else. Their insecurity follows them into every interaction. Their need for attention keeps them emotionally dependent on reactions from other people. In many ways, they carry their suffering everywhere without understanding where it truly comes from. That perspective creates patience, not naive patience, realistic patience rooted in an understanding of human imperfection. Every person carries unseen fears, unresolved wounds, and emotional habits built through years of unconscious repetition. Some confront those patterns honestly. Others spend their entire lives projecting them outward through conflict and control. A disciplined mind learns to notice this without becoming emotionally consumed by it. Observation replaces immediate judgment. Clarity replaces impulsive reaction, and slowly, the emotional grip of foolish behavior begins weakening because understanding dissolves much of the illusion surrounding it. This creates a kind of emotional independence many people never fully experience. The opinions of emotionally unstable individuals lose the power to define your inner state. Their attempts to provoke you no longer feel irresistible, because you recognize the deeper motivation beneath the performance. What once looked intimidating begins looking fragile instead. The constant need to defend yourself starts fading because you stop viewing every emotional outburst as something requiring your participation. And within that shift, there is a quiet kind of freedom. The world still contains foolishness, insecurity, and emotional chaos, but you no longer feel obligated to carry those things inside your own mind every time you encounter them. One of the hardest disciplines to develop is the ability to remain patient when something false is spoken with confidence. The instinct to react appears immediately. The mind wants to correct the misunderstanding before it spreads further. It wants to defend itself against distortion, criticism, or dishonesty before silence is mistaken for weakness. Modern life constantly encourages this impulse. People react within seconds. Opinions are formed instantly. Every disagreement becomes a performance where speed is mistaken for intelligence. The loudest response often receives the most attention, creating the illusion that immediate reaction is always necessary. But the Stoics viewed this very differently. They understood that truth does not become stronger simply because someone defends it emotionally. In fact, emotional urgency often weakens clarity because it pulls the mind away from patience and into impulsive behavior. Wisdom usually moves more slowly than emotion because wisdom is willing to observe before acting. Emotionally reactive people rush because uncertainty makes them uncomfortable. They feel pressure to regain control immediately. The Stoics believe this pressure creates unnecessary suffering because not every false statement requires confrontation, and not every misunderstanding needs instant correction. Sometimes reality reveals what arguments never can. A person may sound convincing for a while. They may speak confidently, manipulate perception, or gain emotional agreement from others. But confidence alone cannot permanently hide inconsistency. Eventually, actions begin exposing what words tried to conceal. Contradictions naturally reveal themselves over time because reality does not bend forever to protect someone's ego. What is unstable eventually reveals its instability. What is dishonest eventually becomes difficult to maintain. The Stoics trusted this process deeply. Most people struggle with patience because they secretly believe they are responsible for forcing others to understand the truth immediately. That is why they carry conversations in their minds long after they end. The discussion feels unfinished internally. The desire to explain becomes obsessive. The mind keeps imagining better responses, stronger arguments, clearer wording. But beneath all of that mental activity is usually the same emotional attachment. The ego wants recognition. It wants validation. It wants reassurance that misunderstanding will not damage identity or reputation. And living this way becomes exhausting. The nervous system never truly rests because it stays trapped in constant emotional defense. Every foolish comment feels like something requiring immediate attention. Every disagreement becomes emotionally heavy. Over time, this creates mental fatigue that slowly drains clarity from everyday life. The Stoics believed much of this exhaustion comes from misunderstanding what truly belongs within our control. Another person's perception is not fully controllable. Their emotional maturity is not controllable. Their willingness to see clearly is not controllable either. Once this is accepted honestly, a certain psychological freedom begins to appear. You stop carrying the impossible responsibility of correcting every confused mind around you. You stop feeling obligated to force understanding where resistance already exists. That does not mean abandoning truth or pretending falsehood no longer matters. It simply means recognizing that reality itself continues working quietly, even without your constant emotional involvement. Even when you stop emotionally fighting to defend the truth, time continues revealing people for who they are. Character eventually exposes itself through repeated behavior. Emotional instability reveals itself without needing constant commentary or confrontation from others. There is enormous strength hidden in that realization, because patience requires confidence. A person who reacts impulsively to everything often reveals insecurity more than certainty. Silence feels uncomfortable to them because silence feels vulnerable. But disciplined people understand something different. Truth rarely depends on emotional performance to survive. Observation often sees farther than emotional urgency ever can. While reactive people rush into conflict trying to force immediate resolution, patient people continue watching patterns unfold naturally over time. And eventually, those patterns become impossible to ignore. Once you understand this, the emotional atmosphere inside your mind begins changing completely. Instead of feeling personally threatened by every foolish opinion, you start realizing that many things eventually correct themselves without your interference. Arrogance carries consequences. Dishonesty creates instability. Emotional impulsiveness slowly destroys trust. People reveal their inner condition through consistency, not isolated moments. The patient mind understands this and stops becoming emotionally consumed by temporary appearances. Someone may look powerful while behaving recklessly today, but recklessness eventually produces visible consequences. Someone may manipulate perception temporarily, but false performances become difficult to maintain forever. Reality quietly continues applying pressure until contradictions begin exposing themselves naturally. Once patience becomes part of the way you think, emotional reactions begin slowing down on their own. The urge to interrupt, defend yourself, or retaliate immediately starts weakening because you no longer believe every situation depends entirely on your emotional involvement. Silence becomes easier. Observation becomes clearer. You begin noticing how often emotionally reactive people destroy their own credibility through unnecessary intensity alone. In trying desperately to appear strong, they expose their instability. Meanwhile, calm individuals remain grounded because they are no longer addicted to immediate validation. Their confidence comes from something quieter, something steadier. This does not mean passive avoidance or endless tolerance for harmful behavior. Some situations still require direct action. Some boundaries still need protection. Wisdom includes discernment. But there is a profound difference between intentional action and emotional compulsion. One comes from clarity. The other comes from fear disguised as urgency. The Stoics constantly practiced separating these two states internally because they understood how easily emotional pressure can distort judgment. A calm mind sees situations more clearly than an agitated one. Eventually, this discipline transforms the entire way conflict is experienced. You stop feeling emotionally rushed by the opinions of unstable people. You stop treating every misunderstanding like a threat to your identity. Instead, you allow time to reveal what temporary arguments never could. And within that patience, there is a quiet kind of authority, because true confidence rarely feels the need to scream for recognition. The Stoics often returned to one simple question whenever conflict entered their lives. What actually matters here? Not what feels satisfying for a few emotional moments. Not what protects pride in front of others, but what genuinely improves the quality of your life in the long run. That question changes everything because it interrupts emotional momentum before it fully takes control. Most impulsive reactions only feel important in the moment. Hours later, they often seem unnecessary, exhausting, or even embarrassing. A sharp response may protect pride temporarily, while damaging your peace for the rest of the day. Someone may win an argument publicly, while privately carrying frustration, resentment, and mental exhaustion long afterward. The Stoics understood that emotional victories often come with hidden costs people notice too late. Many individuals spend enormous amounts of energy trying to prove themselves to people who already decided not to understand them. They explain repeatedly. They defend every detail. They chase validation from minds completely closed to reflection. Over time, this creates emotional dependency because peace becomes tied to external approval. If others misunderstand them, they feel disturbed internally. If someone criticizes them unfairly, their emotional state collapses. This is why so many people live reactively without even realizing it. Their inner world constantly changes based on the opinions, moods, and behavior of those around them. Stoicism teaches something radically different. It teaches that inner stability cannot depend entirely on external agreement. Otherwise, your peace will always belong to whoever provokes you most effectively. There is something deeply freeing about no longer needing everyone to approve of your perspective. Not because you become arrogant or careless, but because you begin understanding the limits of control. You cannot force maturity into someone emotionally committed to misunderstanding you. You cannot force wisdom into someone addicted to conflict. You cannot force clarity into a mind overwhelmed by ego. Once this is fully accepted, emotional reactions begin slowing down naturally. The need to constantly prove yourself weakens. Silence becomes easier. Walking away feels less like defeat and more like intelligence. The mind stops chasing unnecessary battles because it finally understands that not every disagreement deserves emotional investment. This does not mean abandoning standards or refusing to stand up for yourself when truly necessary. The Stoics were not passive people. They simply believed actions should come from clarity instead of wounded pride. There is a difference between calm strength and emotional reactivity pretending to be strength. One creates stability. The other creates endless tension. Most foolish arguments become destructive because both people are trying to protect their identity at the same time. Neither side pauses long enough to ask whether the conflict is even meaningful. They become trapped inside the emotional urgency of the moment. But disciplined people learn how to separate temporary emotional satisfaction from long-term peace. And that separation changes everything, because it allows decisions to become intentional instead of impulsive. Over time, this creates a completely different relationship with conflict itself. Situations that once felt deeply personal begin appearing smaller and less threatening. Criticism loses much of its emotional power because self-worth is no longer entirely dependent on external perception. Provocation becomes easier to observe without instantly reacting to it. The behavior of foolish people stops feeling like an attack on your identity and starts looking more like a reflection of their own internal condition. That shift may sound subtle, but it transforms daily life in profound ways. The mind becomes quieter, attention becomes more focused, emotional energy stops leaking into pointless struggles that produce nothing except exhaustion. Anyone can appear calm when life feels easy. Real discipline appears when frustration, disrespect, or foolishness enters the environment and the min. That steadiness is not emotional suppression. It is awareness strong enough to prevent temporary emotions from controlling permanent behavior. And once that awareness becomes consistent, the world begins looking very different. You stop measuring strength by how aggressively someone argues or how effectively they dominate conversations. Many loud people are internally fragile. Many reactive people are emotionally dependent on conflict. Real strength appears much quieter than most people expect. The strongest individuals often feel no urgent need to constantly prove themselves because their identity is not built on external victory. They focus on protecting something far more valuable than pride: their clarity, their discipline, their peace of mind. They understand that every unnecessary emotional battle steals attention from things that genuinely matter. Growth requires energy. Wisdom requires reflection. Purpose requires focus. Foolish conflict consumes all three while offering nothing meaningful in return. This is why disciplined people become increasingly selective about where they place their attention. And eventually, a deeper kind of freedom begins emerging from this way of living. You stop chasing validation from unstable people. You stop endlessly explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You stop reacting automatically every time someone tries to provoke emotion from you. Instead, you move through life more carefully, more intentionally, more calmly. The behavior of others still exists, but it no longer controls your inner direction. And once you reach that point, something important becomes clear. Peace was never found in defeating foolish people. It was found in refusing to let them govern your inner state. At the end of the day, foolish people will always exist. There will always be those who seek conflict, attention, and emotional control. But the moment you stop allowing their chaos to enter your mind, you take your power back. Real strength is not found in winning every argument. It is found in remaining calm while others lose themselves emotionally. The Stoics understood that peace is not weakness. It is discipline, quiet, controlled, and unshaken. If this message stayed with you, continue building the kind of mind that cannot be easily disturbed by the noise of the world. And thank you for being part of Stoic Journal.